In 1993, Mel Brooks released a film that most critics laughed off as a silly parody. But here's what nobody tells you: Robin Hood, Men in Tights almost didn't exist. The studio wanted to cancel it. The star nearly quit. And the deleted scenes revealed jokes so dark, even Brooks thought twice about including them. This movie you thought was just another comedy? It changed everything about how Hollywood makes parodies. And the real stories behind the scenes are far stranger than anything that made it to screen. Hollywood in 1993 was brutal. Studios wanted safe bets. They wanted sequels. They wanted franchises. What they absolutely did not want was another Robin Hood movie. Especially not a parody. Especially not one by a director whose last film had underperformed. But Mel Brooks had a vision, and he was determined to make it happen. The project started as a joke. Literally. Brooks was sitting in a meeting when someone mentioned all the Robin Hood films that already existed. Kevin Costner's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, had come out just 2 years earlier in 1991. It was serious. It was dramatic. It was a massive box office success. So Brooks did what Brooks always did. He saw an opportunity to turn expectations upside down. But here's where the story gets interesting. When Brooks pitched the idea to studios, almost every single one said no. Not, maybe later. Not, let's think about it. They said no. They said parodies were dead. They said audiences didn't want comedy anymore. They said Brooks was washed up. One studio executive literally told him the film would lose money before a single frame was even shot. The budget was slashed repeatedly. Brooks didn't have the money for big action sequences. He didn't have the money for elaborate sets. He had to get creative in ways most directors never have to consider. Every penny mattered. Every scene had to work. There was no room for failure because failure meant the entire project would be remembered as the moment Mel Brooks finally made a mistake he couldn't recover from. But that's not even the wildest part of the production story. The real chaos happened behind the scenes, and it almost ended everything before cameras even started rolling. But what happened next changed everything about who would star in this film. Cary Elwes was not the first choice. He wasn't even the second choice. In fact, when his name came up in casting meetings, several studio executives literally laughed. This was the actor from The Princess Bride, they said. That movie had flopped at the box office. That movie was a commercial failure. Why would you put him in a major comedy when he'd already proven he couldn't open a film? But Mel Brooks saw something different. Brooks saw an actor who could handle physical comedy, who understood timing, who could deliver both sincere moments and ridiculous humor in the same breath. Brooks believed in Elwes when almost nobody else did. And that belief would become the most important decision in the entire production. Here's what makes this even more shocking: Elwes almost turned down the role. He was offered the part, and his initial reaction was hesitation. He was worried about his career. He was worried about being typecast as a comedy actor. He was worried that doing a parody would make him unhireable for serious roles. His agent told him to think carefully. This wasn't a guaranteed hit. This was a risky move for an actor already struggling to prove himself. The night before he had to give his final answer, Elwes called Mel Brooks directly. They talked for hours. Brooks told him something that changed Elwes's mind completely. Brooks said that comedy required more skill than drama. That making people laugh was harder than making them cry. That the best actors in the world could do drama, but only the truly talented could do comedy. Elwes realized Brooks was right. But there was another problem nobody knew about. During filming, Elwes suffered an injury so severe that he almost had to leave the production entirely. The film could have fallen apart. The entire project could have been abandoned. Yet somehow, impossibly, Elwes pushed through. He showed up. He performed. He became the heart of the entire movie. Yet the real story of why this film mattered goes far deeper than anyone realized at the time. By 1993, Mel Brooks was a living legend. He'd created Blazing Saddles. He'd made Young Frankenstein. He'd directed Spaceballs. These weren't just comedies. They were cultural moments. They were films that changed what comedy could be. But here's the truth that historians rarely mention: by the early 1990s, many people thought Brooks's best days were behind him. His previous film, Life Stinks, had been a commercial and critical disappointment. Critics were harsh. Audiences stayed away. Hollywood whispered that maybe Mel Brooks had finally run out of ideas. Maybe he was too old. Maybe audiences had moved on from his style of humor. The industry was changing. Comedy was changing. And Brooks seemed stuck in the past. Robin Hood, Men in Tights was Brooks's answer to all those doubters. It was his statement. It was him saying, "I still have something to say. I still have stories to tell. I still understand what makes people laugh. And I'm not going anywhere." What most people don't realize is that Brooks put everything into this film. He directed it. He wrote it with Steve Ribback. He even made a cameo appearance. This wasn't a paycheck project. This was personal. This was about legacy. This was about proving that Mel Brooks still mattered in Hollywood. The film also marked something else that's often forgotten. It was one of the last great parodies made by someone who actually understood the genre being parodied. Brooks had grown up watching Robin Hood movies. He understood the tropes. He understood the cliches. He understood exactly what to mock and what to celebrate. Modern parody films often just make fun of things. Brooks's films did something different. They loved the thing they were mocking. That's why they worked. But beyond Brooks's personal journey, this film became a turning point for something much bigger in cinema. It proved that parody still had a place in Hollywood, even if nobody believed it at the time. Yet the deleted scenes tell a story that's far darker than anything audiences ever saw. When you watch Robin Hood, Men in Tights, you're watching a carefully edited version of what Mel Brooks actually filmed. The original cut was much longer. It was much darker. And it contained jokes that would have completely changed how audiences perceived the film. One deleted scene involved the Sheriff of Nottingham making a joke about execution methods that was so graphic, so disturbing, that test audiences actually gasped. Not laughed. Gasped. Mel Brooks watched the reaction and made a decision. He cut it. He knew the joke, no matter how funny it was meant to be, would cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Even a comedic genius has limits. Another scene that was filmed but cut involved a subplot where one of the main characters was going to have a much darker secret. The jokes written around the secret were edgy. They were provocative. They challenged social norms in ways that 1993 audiences simply weren't ready for. Brooks filmed it. He edited it. He watched it. And then he decided to remove it entirely. The scene exists only in the archives now, known by only a handful of people who were on set. But here's what's truly shocking. Some of these deleted jokes were so controversial that Brooks actually destroyed some of the footage. Not by accident. Intentionally. He was afraid that if these scenes ever surfaced, they could damage the film's legacy or, worse, damage the careers of the actors involved. This level of self-censorship from Mel Brooks is almost unheard of. This is a man who made Blazing Saddles, which tackled racism head-on. Yet even he had boundaries. The script also originally contained references to contemporary events and celebrities that would have dated the film immediately. Brooks made the choice to remove most of these references, which is why Robin Hood, Men in Tights has aged so remarkably well. It doesn't feel like a 1993 movie trapped in 1993. It feels timeless because Brooks deliberately made choices to ensure it would still work decades later. What's even more fascinating is that some cast members have revealed in interviews that entire comedic sequences were improvised on set, filmed, and then cut in editing. Cary Elwes has mentioned doing physical comedy bits that didn't make the final cut. These lost moments of pure improvisation exist only in the memories of those who were there. But the real shock came when the film was finally released and audiences reacted in a way absolutely nobody expected. When Robin Hood, Men in Tights opened on July 28, 1993, the studio braced for disaster. They'd already written off the film mentally. They were planning their exit strategy. They were preparing press releases to explain why a Mel Brooks film had failed. The industry consensus was clear: this movie would lose money. The opening weekend numbers came in. And then something strange happened. The film didn't bomb. It didn't collapse. It opened at number 2 at the box office. Behind only Jurassic Park, which was a genuine phenomenon. But more importantly, it held strong. It had legs. It kept making money week after week. By the end of its theatrical run, Robin Hood, Men in Tights had grossed over $35 million domestically. That might not sound like much today, but in 1993, with a modest budget, this was a success. This was a vindication. But here's what the studios didn't anticipate: the film's real success wouldn't come from theaters. It would come from home video. When the film was released on VHS and later on DVD, something magical happened. People started watching it repeatedly. Families watched it together. Kids discovered it. Comedy fans studied it. The film found its true audience not in multiplexes but in living rooms across America. The box office numbers told one story, but the cultural story was completely different. Critics had been divided. Some praised it. Others dismissed it as juvenile. But audiences didn't care what critics thought. They loved it. They quoted it. They memorized it. Lines from the film became part of popular culture. Master of Disguise became a catchphrase. The sheriff's ridiculous obsession with the Robin Hood legend became iconic. What's fascinating is that this pattern, initial skepticism followed by massive home video success, became a template that many studios would follow in the years after. Robin Hood, Men in Tights proved that a film didn't need to be a massive theatrical hit to be culturally significant. It proved that audiences would find movies they loved, even if critics initially dismissed them. The film also proved something else that changed Hollywood's relationship with parody. It showed that you could make fun of something while still respecting it. You could be irreverent and affectionate at the same time. This balance became the blueprint for countless comedies that followed. But 20 years later, when cast members started doing interviews, they revealed secrets about what really happened on set that had been hidden the entire time. In 2013, 20 years after the film's release, Cary Elwes did an interview where he revealed something that shocked fans. He said that during filming, he realized this movie was going to be special. Not because of the script. Not because of the budget. But because of the cast's chemistry and their absolute commitment to making each other laugh on set. He talked about Roger Rees, who played the Sheriff of Nottingham, being so committed to comedy that he would stay late after filming to work on scenes. Rees would ask Mel Brooks if they could try different takes, different line readings, different physical approaches. This dedication elevated every scene he was in. Rees understood that comedy requires precision. It requires timing. It requires absolute commitment to the bit. Then there was Dave Chappelle, who played a Chew in the film. Chappelle was relatively unknown at the time. This was one of his first major film roles. What's remarkable is that Chappelle brought an energy to set that influenced how other actors approached their performances. He was so committed, so present, so funny that he raised the bar for everyone around him. Years later, when Chappelle became a massive star, people would look back at Robin Hood, Men in Tights and realize they'd been watching future comedy legend in action. Isaac Hayes, who voiced the narrator, recorded his part in a studio, but what people don't know is that Hayes ad-libbed significant portions of his narration. Mel Brooks loved it so much that he kept the improvisation in the film. Hayes brought a gravitas and smoothness to the comedy that grounded it. His narration became the backbone of the entire film's tone. But the most shocking revelation came from Mel Brooks himself in a 2018 documentary. He admitted that during post-production, he seriously considered cutting certain scenes because he thought audiences wouldn't understand them. He was worried about being too clever. He was worried about going over people's heads. But his editor convinced him to keep everything in. The editor told Brooks that audiences were smarter than he was giving them credit for. That people would get the jokes. That people would appreciate the intelligence hidden beneath the silliness. Brooks took that advice. He kept the scenes. He kept the clever jokes. And it turned out his editor was absolutely right. The film's intelligence is part of why it's aged so well. It works on multiple levels. Kids can enjoy the silly humor. Adults can catch the deeper references and satirical commentary. Yet the true measure of this film's impact wouldn't be fully understood until decades later, when its legacy became undeniable. Robin Hood, Men in Tights didn't just make money. It didn't just entertain audiences. It fundamentally changed how Hollywood thought about parody and comedy filmmaking. In the 30 years since its release, this film has influenced countless comedians, directors, and writers who grew up watching it. When you look at modern comedy films, you can trace a direct line back to what Mel Brooks accomplished here. The idea that a parody can be both funny and respectful to its source material came from this film. The understanding that comedy requires intelligence, not just jokes, came from this film. The realization that audiences will support a movie even if critics dismiss it came from this film. Directors like Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who made films like 21 Jump Street and The Lego Movie, have cited Robin Hood, Men in Tights as an influence. They learned from Brooks that you can satirize something while still celebrating it. You can mock tropes while still being aware that those tropes exist for a reason. This balance is the DNA of modern comedy. But beyond filmmaking, the cultural impact has been profound. The film proved that Mel Brooks still had relevance. It resurrected his career. After Robin Hood, Brooks went on to make more films, to direct more Broadway shows, to remain a cultural figure. Without this film's success, his later work might never have happened. The trajectory of his entire career was changed by this one movie that almost didn't exist. The film also created a template for how legacy actors could remain relevant. Here was Mel Brooks, who could have faded into obscurity. Instead, he made something that spoke to new generations. He made something that proved he understood contemporary audiences while maintaining his own artistic voice. That's incredibly difficult to do, and he did it perfectly. Before we finish, I have to ask, which Robin Hood movie is your favorite? The serious Costner version or Mel Brooks's comedic take? Let me know in the comments below. Honestly, the debate between these two versions tells us everything about how different audiences approach the same story. What's truly remarkable is that Robin Hood, Men in Tights exists in a unique space in cinema. It's not just a successful parody. It's not just a comedy that worked. It's a film that proved something fundamental about entertainment, that audiences are intelligent, that comedy requires respect for its source material, and that sometimes the best way to honor something is to laugh at it while still caring about it deeply. The film's influence extends even to how we talk about movies today. When we discuss whether a remake or reboot should be made, Robin Hood, Men in Tights is often held up as an example of how to do it right. It's a masterclass in genre deconstruction. It's a love letter to adventure films wrapped in comedic irreverence. 30 years later, people still quote this film. Parents show it to their children. Comedy fans study it frame by frame. Universities teach it in film classes. This wasn't supposed to happen. This film was supposed to fail. Instead, it became immortal. It became the film that defined an era of comedy and proved that Mel Brooks would always be relevant as long as audiences wanted to laugh at the absurdity of storytelling itself. The real legacy isn't just about the film itself. It's about what it represents. It represents a moment when everyone doubted. It represents an artist who refused to fade away. It represents audiences who rejected critical consensus and embraced something they loved. It represents the power of comedy to transcend commercial expectations and become something culturally significant. If you've enjoyed discovering these hidden truths about Robin Hood, Men in Tights, make sure you subscribe because the next story on this channel reveals something even more surprising about how classic films were almost completely different than what we ended up seeing. Stories like this one, stories that reveal what really happened behind the headlines and behind the scenes, are what this channel is all about. The story of Robin Hood, Men in Tights isn't just a Hollywood success story. It's a reminder that belief matters. That persistence matters. That sometimes the things we think will fail are exactly the things that will endure. Mel Brooks believed in this film when no one else did. Cary Elwes believed in it when his career was uncertain. And audiences believed in it when critics said they shouldn't. That collective belief created something that still makes people laugh 3 decades later. And that's a legacy worth celebrating.